Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel session. After the break, I hope we all gathered here. We might have some more guests towards throughout the panel, but we are going to start now to waste time. So, welcome to the panel about digital sovereignty, technological power, and the transformation of governance. This panel, we always want to talk about emergent technologies such as AI and see it from different aspects, from different angles, from different expertise, from different disciplines. So we have a really rich panel here, and we thought that it is a good idea to make more like a roundtable discussion where each of the panelists will have the opportunity to give an expose from their own perspective, from their own expertise, and that will be each of you I would like to ask to speak for 5 minutes, and then after that I already sent to all of you the questions in advance. So we will go through these questions, but also feel free to bring up maybe some issues that were maybe not mentioned, or something that would really approach more your expertise and something that you think it's relevant and important now to mention. So I would like to ask you to maybe go in the order. Maybe we can start from that side of the table and come to this side of the table. That would be the most easiest without mixing up the order. That would be convenient. So László Karvalics, our colleague from iASK, can start. And then we're moving to Balázs Barta and Zsolt Ződi and Balázs Bartóki-Gönczy, and finally Tinatin Khidasheli. Péter Krekó before. Sorry. And so László, the floor is yours.
Okay, even if I'm very far from the regulation issues. Okay, so limited time, limited ambitions. I would like to talk only about two important concepts, which I think in a technological power and transformation and governance narratives are always in a shadow corner. And hope you will like these concepts and you will use it later. You can combine it with a lot of narratives. So the first concept is the knowledge governance. We hear a lot about governance generally. And we know that within organization and industry environment, knowledge management is a very important part of activity. But knowledge governance, managing knowledge assets, perhaps within a country or within Europe. Maybe you remember the Europe of knowledge, the Lisbon project of the European Union. When we are talking about knowledge governance, it is a very complex activity to orchestrate every subsystems where knowledge is important: education, science, innovation, and every other fields of government work where knowledge is important to find the best decision, the best solution, the best strategic plan. You can apply it within municipal environment, knowledge governance, in an urban situation, knowledge government of a region, or knowledge government of a country, or even global knowledge governance. And in the age of AI, this approach is extremely important because now, as we can see, the development of AI is very one-sided. There are a lot of software engineering work, a lot of business work around the development of AI, a lot of regulatory efforts. There are a lot of debates about the AI ethics and so on. However, AI is naturally a continuation of the total production of our culture. AI itself is a cultural issue too. So there is a hidden aspects of AI governance, the governance, knowledge governance of AI, and it's totally different. It's AI, from the AI governance. I knew that I will talk about the knowledge governance in this way, and today morning, right in early 7 o'clock, I've got a new position paper of the Hungarian trade unions to the new government. And I would like to cite one sentence from this trade union document. One of the new central issues in employment policy is therefore not only how many new jobs will be created, but also how the knowledge base of the Hungarian economy and society can be preserved and regenerated. The regeneration of expertise will be one of the defining challenges of employment policy in the coming decade. This is particularly important in industry, healthcare, education, public services, and knowledge-intensive sectors. So now we can see what knowledge governance means, even if they do not call it knowledge governance. Just they call the Hungarian government to deal with these fields in this way. Okay, the second key concept is new humanities. In the context of AI, I was talking about the dominance of engineering and legal aspects. However, you all know that in the shadow of science and technology, social sciences and humanities are always in the corner, even if they play a very important role when we try to apply our knowledge in the everyday life. And there is no time to list all the benefits of new humanities in this technology-dominated environment. So I just list the fields, different fields of new humanities, and you can find the way or the connection to the most challenging and highlighted issues of our science policy. So there are environmental humanities, and within the environmental humanities, there are so-called hydro-humanities or water humanities. Sometimes it's called blue humanities. Everything around and about water from a humanities perspective. Soil humanities, weather or climate humanities, even arboreal humanities. Social sciences and humanities dealing with trees in different contexts, trees and forest. There are the second branch of new humanities is medical and health humanities. It's also not only a medical profession. There are a lot of aspects coming from social sciences and humanities. And these two distinct fields, medical humanities and health humanities. And now I see on your eyes that you know that health humanities is very influenced by communication, the way of communication, the way how we are talking about our health. The third one is space humanities. And the fourth one is digital humanities. Digital humanities, which is a social science approach to everything which is around the digital, the newborn digital ecosystem and digital practices. And typically it is about the digitally enhanced humanities, digital philology and something like that, but it's far more. There is we call it culturomix, a born digital humanities. We would not be able to produce new results without special methods to use big data. There's a culturomics. AI humanities is again a distinct field, and information society studies the overall background of this development. Believe me, new humanities will be more and more important. And I will finish with one example. It's again today an early morning news. In China, in the higher education system, more than 10,000 courses was terminated as obsolete courses. The majority of them were social sciences and humanities, and 10,000 new courses were introduced, mainly around AI, software engineering, and other fields. If you deal with contemporary AI narratives, you know that AI alignment, to make balance between different background disciplines behind AI, you can imagine how strange or how bizarre this decision. And you can feel, if we approach to the problem universe of AI with a knowledge governance approach, and we know that it is extremely important to deal with AI from a history, culture, sociology, psychology, and other aspects. All those, Europe or Hungary, whose practice is based on new humanities or somehow uses new humanities and knowledge governance in a proper way, can be somehow a generator of a competitive advantage.
Thank you so much, László. And I would like to present our colleague from iASK, Balázs Barta. And I would like to ask Gergo to play the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you also have more than 5 minutes. And then
I wanted to say
because I like
my
equality.
time, so I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
It's over. Thank you so much. Okay. So I'm very disciplined. So Ivana said we should talk about data sovereignty and regulation. So I tried to make a presentation on that, also referring back and connecting to what László has just said several times. Just some figures about us. We are an applied research center, so I'm very proud member of the iASK team, in the innovation team, which is my main function. On top of that, I'm also leading an applied research organization where we are very focused on international research and application of new digitalization technologies. Just one last slide about us. We are focusing on humanoid robotics. And sometimes you say, oh, this is crazy, this guy is always talking about this, but I will come back to this story about that. We also talk about life sciences, host well-being, and we are making also ecosystem development programs in an organization. So why I think that regulation within artificial intelligence is a must? Because that was one of the questions you've raised before, that should it be regulated or not? And why it's so important is that now artificial intelligence is a critical infrastructure. We have seen several times that just most recently they restricted the latest AI model from United States, and we have no access to that. And somehow everybody in Europe started to worry about what should we do. So and we built it already into models, so we have to find alternatives. There are also a lot of protests, not just in Europe, but also worldwide about data centers. They are taking a lot of water, they are creating a lot of heat, huge environmental potential, pollution is there. I don't know if you've read, recently Jeff Bezos announced that we should make a decision if we should feed and give water to people or to new data centers. How absurd idea that is. And there's also a question how we could control AI and how we could, for example, even in the US, they now said that they want to have some control over artificial intelligence because they think it's going too fast. And they who were the pioneers of that, now they claim that it has to be regulated. So it's absolutely a must to regulate it. The question how we regulate it in Europe, and does it lead to competitiveness or not? What is important is that in Europe we started to focus on regulation. There are a lot of complaints. Why do we regulate AI when we do not have top AI companies and things like that? What we will work, and I will show you what we are working on the company, you will see exactly why I'm a firm believer that we should regulate first. Otherwise, we will end up in a tragedy. So how we regulate it on EU level, we delivered acts that has to be implemented on country level. That's clear. What is also important that in Europe, we decided to have data infrastructure sovereignty. Before that, we used Google Drive. Before that, we used the computing power from the States and so on. And now there's a decision that it is to be built, and it is being built in Europe now. So the Euro High Performance Computing Center and the Gaia X is for the data storage, that's for the data processing, and AI Factory is for the data applications and AI applications. So there is an infrastructure in place and there's a regulation in place. What the question is for Europe is, can we make money out of this? Can we make applications out of this, or we are just a proud regulator? What is important that once we have this framework set, then we can define innovation within that framework. And it means that when we do something, it will be safe, we will respect personal rights, we will respect IPR, and a lot of important aspects that has to be met by the cultural values of us as Europeans. That was discussion in the previous topic. That will distinguish us from others. So it's not about exploiting the potential of potential customers, but about augmenting what you said, László, about the human competencies and capabilities of the individuals. So it's a very, very different approach. Okay, how we try to create in such an environment. And now I'm coming back to my mania about the humanoid. We are working with Chinese, we are working with Americans, and we are working with Germans on humanoid robot software development. When we talk to the Chinese, what they are selling is that it's reflecting your emotions. So if you are sad, it helps you to make sure that you feel rightly sad. That's so stupid, no? I mean, sorry to say that, yeah. So it gives you in the direction of depression or unjustified happiness. The question is that, okay, how can we create value from this? And this is what we are focusing on with 18 people and 2 million euro investment, is that we want to create a software that helps you as an individual to go back to the society. So the objective of the AI and the physical embodied AI with the robot is to convince you that you have to act as an individual, not to be isolated, but make more connections with the society. This is why we say that we are developing an ethical software for the humanoid robot. And this is for an example how I believe, and then we have the regulatory framework for that. So we have ISO 27001, we have the GDPR compliance and so on. So all the data we are processing are anonymous, and it's something that can be used for the benefit of the individual. And that's an example how I believe we could create value. And of course, we are doing that in manufacturing as well and in ecosystem development. I speed up. So last question, if we know that AI is important and we have sovereignty of infrastructure, then comes the next question, who is controlling AI? So when we have applications and when we have solutions, who is saying that it's true? If I'm in a municipality and it tells that, okay, you cannot access water or you have to go that way on the road, who is making the decision? So it's very important that we educate the people and we educate the public sector that it's not something third party they can blame, but it's part of their discussion or part of their decision-making procedure and not a substitute for them. And the same with technology, and that's why I spoke about the humanoid solution we are focusing on, that we have to be absolutely transparent. So for example, what we see from the robot during the interaction, we give a report to the individual. So it will know exactly what the machine knows about it. It's also important that we are preparing automated alert reports. You are too much dependent on me. Turn me off. Imagine how quickly you can be dependent if you don't do that. So these are the kind of things we are doing. And this is why I think that Chinese are very smart, so I don't want to say anything negative about them. But I don't believe AI is an engineering issue. and don't believe that they should cut courses on human resources, on humanities and other sectors. It is the application of the AI that is important, not the AI is important. And this is why we have to increase the courses that are about societal studies and not to decrease and replace them with engineering. So thank you so much. That's what I said.
Thank you so much for raising so many important issues, which we can go back to later as well. And now I would like to present Professor Zsolt Ződi from Ludovika University of Public Service. Thank you for coming with us to us again, and the floor is yours. Also, you can have a bit more than
It's
more
an honor
time.
to be
Thank
here.
you.
I would like to talk about the Brussels effect. You might heard about it. That's, I think, an important narrative around European regulation. And you probably heard this kind of bon mot that the US is inventing things and the Chinese are copying things or producing things, and the Europeans are regulating things. So that's the thing we are doing. And one part of this narrative, or as a kind of a little bit more serious version of this bon mot, is what is called the Brussels effect. This is the title of a book which was written by Anu Bradford. She's a Finnish American scholar, and the book is about Europe's ability to somehow regulate the whole world. And the definition is this: EU's unilateral ability to regulate the global marketplace. Now, I don't want to go into details that why is it how this whole thing developed, or the situation that Europe is became the regulatory superpower of the world. But to put it very simply, the process was that Europe made enormous efforts to create a common market. And during creating the common market, they always took the highest standards of the most developed European countries. And because these well-developed countries just didn't want their companies to have a disadvantage in other markets, so that was their self-interest of these developed countries, and therefore they put a very high standard. And after that, this kind of procedure, this thing happened in global terms as well. So big companies wanted to enter into the European market, so they had to comply with these high standards. And then if they didn't want their competitors to meet lower standards, and therefore they enforced their governments to enforce these higher standards. That's an oversimplification of the book, but that's the thing. And that's what happened in competition law. That's what happened in the case of GDPR. That's what happened in the case of product safety regulations. These are kind of all fields where, basically something to do with customer protection and consumer protection. So that's the thing. And then Anu Bradford has a theory that actually 5 preconditions are needed to have a Brussels effect. The one is the big market, the European market, which is 450 people. That's the first precondition. The other is stringent standards, so high standards. That's another one. The third is inelastic targets, which means that the companies cannot circumvent the regulation, because if they want to produce, for example, products to the European market, they have to meet these standards. So they cannot just changing their headquarters, moving to another place is not enough, because anyway they have to, if they want to produce consumer goods, then they have to meet these standards. The fourth one and the fifth one is the non-divisibility, which means that if they cannot, the types of products in these cases is such that they cannot build up two product lines. So if you meet certain standards, so for example you have products which are produced without GMO, GMO-free products, then it makes no sense to build up a separate product line with GMO. And that's also partly true for the services. So the question is the following: we have as I mentioned, the market, in certain fields, Europe was very successful to export the regulation to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world accepted this or implemented this. And the question is that whether the digital regulation or digital legislation of the EU will have a Brussels effect or not. And to put it very simply, I do not believe that. I think in these fields there won't be Brussels effect. And I have three explanations for that. The first explanation is when we are talking about the Digital Services Act, for example, which is the regulation of the big platforms. Basically, it's about, I don't want to go into details because that's a 130 pages long legislation, so it's a little bit hard to compress it to two sentences, but it's about transparency and it's about user protection, to put it very simply, to protect the rights of the users. That's the main rationale behind the legislation. All of the preconditions are there in case of the DSA, except one, and this is the non-divisibility. In the case of the platforms can provide services not just tailor-made to a particular country, but also per user. They can even customize their services to their individualized on a user level. So that's one thing and that's what's happening actually. So if you see that how the algorithms work in different countries and how the service actually looks like in different countries, then you will find very important differences between. So that's one thing. But the other thing is even more important. In the cases where the Brussels effect was very strong, all these cases were similar from one point of view. A strong big company was on the one side of the regulation, and a weak, vulnerable customer was on the other side. That's true for all of the fields of law where there was a Brussels effect. Now, in the case of the platforms, for the first side, it seems that, okay, there are the platforms and there's the user. But the problem is that actually the platforms are, they are transmitting the user content of the users, and the conflicts is not just between the platform and the user, but also between user and user. So it's not a simple situation where a big company is confronted, or a big company is confronted with a weak user, but the users themselves, the regulation should take into consideration situations where the users themselves are in conflict. So that's a big problem. So the regulation is not so simple that I say, okay, this regulation prefers the customers or protects the customers, because the customers should be protected against each other as well. So the freedom of speech is very much conflicting with the personality rights of another user. So that's a big problem. So the situation is not this kind of two-sided imbalance situation, but it's a kind of situation where there are three poles. So that's another thing, and a third argument, which at least I believe that there'll be no Brussels effect, at least in the case of the Digital Services Act, is the changed geopolitical situation. In the past few years, for example, in the US, there were a lot of legislative initiatives, also in the Congress, but by the Federal Trade Commission and other regulatory agencies, and they wanted to regulate the US platforms in a way which is very much similar to the DSA, like this transparency requirements and so DSA-like solutions. But then the Trump government came. And the whole situation has changed entirely. And that's also true for the regulation of AI. So if you see those attempts which were under the Biden government, the logic of the regulatory initiatives concerning the AI, these were also these user protection oriented initiatives, and also the initiatives concerning the platform regulation was very much similar to the DSA. Now this whole thing changed radically under the Trump government, because Trump government does not want to follow this line and prefer the user. They rather prefer the big tech companies, and of course this is not an openly pro big tech thinking. It's about competitiveness and all these kind of things, but still this changed situation in the US government changed also results that there'll be no Brussels effect. So Brussels effect is, and I think we like it very much. We are very proud of that. But the thing is that, in my opinion, it's unfortunately over. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and I think you really answered most of my questions that were in the number one. So I'm going to restructure my questions a little bit later, and now I would like to ask. It's all right. I'm happy you did that, actually. And I would like to ask Balázs Bartóki-Gönczy. I hope that your surname name I said correctly. I am from Ludovika University of Public Service. Thank you so much, and feel free to take also up to 10 minutes, no worries.
Thank you. I think I prepared for 5 minutes, so I hope I can remain in this time frame. I will not talk about AI, I will talk about digital sovereignty of Europe in space, in outer space, and the situation of the space industry, of the European space industry and space politics in this new space era. So today we have 15,000 active satellites in outer space, more than 150 million space debris, so it's a question of space sustainability. But one point of connection with the AI that Elon Musk announced late November, that the American company will launch 1 million satellites to low Earth orbit to provide solar energy to the AI farms. So this is going to be unsustainable where we are heading, and there's a new space race. Private industry is heavily present in the space industry. It's a $650 billion industry today, but it will reach, according to the estimations, $1.8 trillion by 2030. And the problem is that Europe is lagging behind the United States and China, even more India, more and more, and there are new tigers, of course, in the space industry. So the space is more and more militarized. So all the time we use all these satellites for dual use purposes, but we use it for Earth observation, navigation, secure communication, which is heavily needed for the military. But space infrastructure is not just needed for complement the capabilities of the army on the ground and in the air, but also to deter the enemy in space. So there is more and more risk because all these infrastructures we use today are critical infrastructures already. So it's not by surprise that space has become critical and a strategic point, as it was confirmed by the meeting of Péter and Emmanuel Macron on the 3rd of June in Paris, when one of the pillars of their new cooperation will be based on space. So what does Europe need if it wants to be a sovereign, digitally sovereign power in our space? It means that it is not dependent even on its allies' capability, meaning the United States, basically. First is Earth observation satellite system that we have. We have a very good Earth observation satellite system. This is called Copernicus. The second one is a own navigation and time positioning satellite system. We have it. We launched it in 2003. It's still not ready, but we use it already for security purposes. This is called the Galileo. These two systems are among the leaders, technology leaders on the world. So this is the two good points. On the other side, we are just building out our capability of space situational awareness. It means that we are capable independently to see where are the satellites, which are the trajectories, where are the collision points, where is the enemy, where is the space debris. So that's the second. We are very weak in military capabilities. Of course, you all know about European Union and joint military, the problems all about that, but we have only national programs. The European Space Agency starts its own military programs, but it's not enough yet. We have the IRIS² project of the European Union. It means that we want to have an own secure satellite communication system, not to rely on SpaceX. SpaceX is coming to the European market. They want to provide telecommunication services for European consumers, and the risk is that they are going to take over the European telecommunications market. This is not now, it's their next generation satellite network, which will be capable to put a chip in this phone and then basically to provide service directly to that phone. Force access to space independently of the United States capabilities. So first you need a rocket. Rocket, we are in problem because we have the Ariane 6 rocket, but it was not done in time, and it is not competitive because it's not reusable, as the SpaceX has a reusable rocket, the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. We don't have any spacecraft. The Americans, the Russians, the Chinese have spacecraft. They can bring up and bring back humans and cargo, and we have not even plans about having an own space station. It is heavily needed for products like the pharmaceutical industry, which needs to be tested primarily in aerospace. And finally, my last point is about the governance of the European governance. So it is very complex, too complex to be competitive. The first, we have the European Space Agency, which is not subordinated to the European Union. It's an independent international organization, 23 member states, including the UK, for example. Then we have the European Union with its own space program, with its own European Space Program Agency, and then we have 27 member states. The leading states are France, the biggest budget, and then Germany, and then Italy, and then Spain. And that's very diverging. So the European Space Agency is not very competitive in producing because they have this geo-return principle. It means that the member states pay an amount of money and to give some back. Most of this money must be given back by the ESA. So when Airbus and all these major European space industry players are producing something, manufacturing something, they have to select from Poland, from Hungary, and this is good for us to building our space industry, but it's not always good for the competitivity because maybe it will be slower, poor quality, and even more expensive. So the French and German wants to rule it out. At the level of the European Union, they are just trying to regulate. Maybe it's the second point when we talk about regulation. It doesn't seem to be very effective. It will rise to cost, and it heavily regulates the European industry. We also in the United States, Donald Trump announced in late August that they are going to deregulate the American space industry. Surprise, surprise. Environmental protection will be ruled out from the European space industry regulation. And finally, we have all these member states and the diverging interests of the European member states. Germany, France, as you can imagine, they always want to promote their national space industry. By the way, Germany has just announced that they are going to spend in the next 7 years 35 billion euros for their space defense capabilities, which seems to be a lot. But the United States spends 60 billion US dollar each year only for space defense capabilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to announce Péter Krekó from ELTE to continue. And also you have 10 minutes if you want to use them. And after that we can also have additional questions for you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And also let me introduce myself also as a proud iASK fellow alumnus, because part of my heart is always in Kőszeg. And okay, my whole heart is in Kőszeg. And I'm always happy to return to Kőszeg. So thanks a lot for Ferenc Miszlivecer, for the whole institution, for the invitation that I was glad to accept. And I probably will eat up my 10 minutes time, but won't be longer than that. And I would follow up on a few points that have been raised already in the panel. And I was quite happy that Balázs talked about the necessity of regulation. And I find it a bit stunning how easily this narrative went through the public imagination that regulation and innovation is something mutually exclusive, that regulation kills innovation per se, and that if you regulate, then you just cannot innovate at all, which I think pretty much is, let's say, it's a big tech and also big company narrative that does not really add up to reality. And if you just think about some classical liberal thinkers, John Stuart Mill, for example, argues that you need rule of law, the basics of rule of law, that the state defends your life and your property in order to get free. So the precondition of human freedom, and I think freedom is needed for innovation as well, is a certain level of rule of law. So does the EU have some innovation problems? Clearly it does. Is it because of regulation? I don't really think so. I think in very regulated environments, innovation can happen as well. So I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy, and I don't think that we need total anarchy and chaos to be able to innovate well if we stretch this argument even further. I would like to raise 3 main points on the practical title of the panel that I think is very timely and important as well. I have always been a transatlanticist, so my heart is bleeding when I have to say, but I have to say, and I will argue in 3 points why Europe really needs to be as much digitally sovereign as possible. The first point is the inevitable geopolitical conflict. It is more and more obvious that the current administration in the United States, and the current administration does not come out of nowhere, so it's half of the American society, and the mindset that is more goes way beyond the MAGA camp, regards the European Union more of a rival than an ally, and we just see that how former friendships, like the friendship of Donald Trump with Giorgia Meloni, are breaking at our eyes. So as we see, it's a deteriorating relationship, which also I think it began from a rather low point, but still it's deteriorating. So the general mindset, I think, in the current U.S. administration makes it unfortunately very important that Europe thinks about its strategic autonomy, not just on the level of defense, as it has been mentioned and crucially important, but also in the digital domain. The second point would be that there is an inevitable political conflict as well that I think makes regulation important. Giuliano De Empoli has a brilliant book. It has been published in Hungarian as well. The English title is The Age of Predator. And this gentleman was a political consultant of Matteo Renzi, a previous Italian prime minister, and also he was a consultant of Emmanuel Macron and a lot of others. He regards himself as an old school establishment guy who thinks about centrist values, European institutions, and so on and so on. And his main argument that he raises in the book is that there is a coalition between big tech and populist politicians that have one common experience. You have to destroy existing institutions, you have to kill the lawyers, you have to disrupt, you have to demolish everything because you set the rules of the game. And you, as a good populist politician, you typically erase everyone else from the party system and the political system, in the sense that you break the rules. What the big tech companies typically did is that they totally transformed, changed our media consumption habits and generally the information industry, to say so. And his argument is that what we have seen, but I think they are BFFs again, probably Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It's a rocky relationship, but his argument is that we just should not focus on the very people. I mean, there are joint mutual interests of populist politicians and big tech companies, and this is practically to weaken the existing institutions. And if the existing institutions, including the regulations, are weakened, I think it is definitely something that is bad for the average citizen in the United States, but in the European Union as well. Yeah, we can just see that American companies all over the European Union are strongly lobbying against any kind of regulation on the digital domain, and they also use it as I would not say bargaining chip, as a blackmail chip against the United States. When G.D. Vance told it once, and luckily he did not keep his promise, that if the European Union will impose fines on X, then United States is going to leave NATO. Finally, it did not happen, luckily, but it just, I think, illustrates well how much the current U.S. government is in this very strong coalition with the big tech platforms trying to kill all attempts of regulation. And I think European Union has to resist. And I'm not a lawyer myself, but I'm a rather big fan of the attempts of European Union to regulate the social media and also AI. Of course, it's imperfect. Of course, ambitions are that high, deliveries that low. But I think these are steps in the good direction. And I think there is a third argument as well on why to become more sovereign, because there's a huge dependence from the United States, not only on the level of the social media companies and the very large online platforms, which are all American except one, TikTok, but also when it comes to softwares, AI, and so on and so on. And more, there is a strategic thinking in the European Union that maybe if, let's say, workers of the European Commission and European Council and so on, as everyone else, using ChatGPT to help them finding some good ideas when they are preparing, let's say, new policy proposals, then all of this information can get into American corporate hands, or already are in American corporate hands, and probably, maybe it's an overstretched sphere, but can get to American governmental hands as well, which in an era of increasing rivalry can be something of a bit problematic. Yes, and maybe some final thoughts on the disinformation field, where I have a bit more impression on what is happening and how successful the European Union's attempts and European Commission's attempts are to regulate. My think tank, Political Capital Institute, is part of a broader anti-disinformation network called Hungarian Digital Media Observatory, which is part of a broader European anti-disinformation network called European Digital Media Observatory. And just following up on what Zsolt have already said, this is an institution that the Biden administration regarded as a role model in their fight against disinformation. The new Trump administration regards it as an enemy to be, and if some of my friends and some of my colleagues who were participated in giving ideas for the Digital Services Act, for example, have found themselves on some entry ban lists to the United States. So I think it's controversial to this extent. And we had some experiences from the last Hungarian elections from the rapid response system. The rapid response system is an institution that was set up by the European Commission, that they open a window for 1 month before the election when certain certified institutions, including my institution, can flag content in Meta, in TikTok, in YouTube, in Instagram as well, so every social media surfaces, and they can decide if they remove the content or not. We were called chief censors because of we participated in this process. Why? What we did was practically twofold. We first of all reported political advertisements. Since last October, Google and Meta does not accept officially any new political advertisement, which pretty much changed the Hungarian social media landscape before the elections. But some political advertisements slipped through the filters of Meta and Google. We flagged them, and Meta have removed almost 80% of the content we flagged. We also flagged inauthentic profiles, Russian and Hungarian domestic political inauthentic profiles, trolls and bots. And also Meta have removed about 70% of the profiles we have reported. And I'm just saying that because, okay, it's like trying to set off a forest fire with a water pistol. So of course I did not want to say that we solved the disinformation problem before the election. But the very social media companies who typically raise the argument, sorry, we just cannot do anything with disinformation because it's beyond our understanding, we can't see, and so on and so on. Interestingly, in this 1 month period before the elections are very cooperative in removing content that bends into either the Digital Services Act and or their policy or their policies, because the European Commission has a rule and regulation that pushes them in that direction. So I think it's just a small illustration that regulation is not always needless, and regulations in even such a tricky issue as digital disinformation can be partially successful and have some impact. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I have also some questions for you later, but I wanted now to introduce our speaker, who is last but not the least, Tinatin. Sorry, I managed it last time. Khidasheli. Sorry, who is coming from Civic Idea and former Minister of Defense of Georgia and now lives in Japan. And thank you so much for coming here, and the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you. Well, thank you first of all for having me here. It's my first time, different from most of you guys. And it's been 11 years that I've not been to Hungary as well. So when I crossed the border from Austria, I had this feeling that, wow, okay, I'm back. I was a student in Budapest at the Central European University, and this country is very dear to me, but for obvious reasons, unfortunately, there was not much room for people like me, democracy activists and liberals, to travel here and work, attend events or work with the counterparts. So I'm happy, really happy to be back to Budapest. To Hungary. Well, okay, I will, we've heard a lot. We've heard a lot about the space, about the technology part of it, the engineering part of it. Our panel is called Digital Sovereignty, Technological Power and Transformation of Governance, and I will try to talk about that last portion of it, transformation of governance portion of it. I'm a lawyer. That was mentioned here several times, and democracy activist. For me, this entire issue of AI governance regulations is very important, very close to my everyday work, is unfortunately or fortunately, and we can discuss exactly that issue, is transforming our countries and transforming way the states worked, or the whole thing we knew about it before. So the one of the key issues that I struggle with and I work on and do my research as well is the political control that we witness almost daily through AI and through social media and through the new technology all over the world. And for myself, I divide world to make it very simple, in two parts. AI savvy countries and AI ignorant countries. And then depending on which group you fall or which group your country falls, the politics is very different, extremely different from both the regulatory point of view as well as responses point of view, responses from government and responses from generally society. Also another angle obviously is dependency on this entire new life, new way of life that we have in governance segment. False contents created, false political narratives created, and basically the entire political system transformed around those false narratives that actually do not exist, but because of the trolls and various manipulated machineries of the AI and technology, somehow politicians start to believe that, oh, this is an issue, and again, in reality, this is absolutely false content and has nothing to do with the actual real life problems of the people. So we again, as I said, I'm a lawyer, and I was taught in a law school, and then later, all the time, there were these concepts of sovereignty that we knew, that were very traditional from Middle Ages. It has almost never changed, and now, obviously, when we use the same concept, and it's heavily used in countries like mine, it was used by Orban here, it is used by all the authoritarian governments. It kind of sounds funny because, well, okay, those old concepts of sovereignty do not really stick anymore, but at the same time, they serve as the most important grounds for this rising far right across the board in many countries. But in reality, what we see more and more is actually the political content or even the process, democratic or whatever process you have in a country, is mostly controlled by not by those old textbook-based sovereignty concept, but by the political control over the data flows and strategic sectors, particularly in vulnerable democracies. We see it across the board. We see it from finance system to any sector or any segment of life, again, in countries that are technologically blind or technologically ignorant, because it's much easier, obviously, to manipulate. And most of the time, countries stick to this, I call it managed ambiguity, when we talked about the regulation a lot here. And in many countries, the issue is not even there. There are no legislations even proposed for regulation. And the reason for that is not that they do not fear it, but the reason for that is exactly the ignorance. They don't know how to approach the issue. They don't know whether to fear to it or have a benefit from it, depending on how much money they control and how much advertisement they can put on the social media. That's all how they measure the effect of AI so far in many countries still, and on that side of the AI ignorance. And that's why they choose this managed ambiguity when they do not necessarily regulate, do not necessarily put the clear, transparent rules for it, but prefer to regulate it by different means, by authoritarian means, by money, by effectively controlling the narrative through trolls and bots, and you know how this whole system works. And this is where obviously players like European Union are becoming critically important on the ground, because then you need to have some sound voice, right, or voice of conscience that at least the democratic forces will use and will articulate and will identify themselves to and say that, okay, here it is. This is people, generally speaking. This is what we need to do to put forward, and that's why the Brussels effect is so important for us. Regardless of what debate actually is going on within the European Union and in Brussels itself, some sense of at least belief that there is a forthcoming thinking about all the negative consequences of it that it brings to the governance process and rule of law based process is there, and we can rely on it, at least with the changes of our governments or in the future when we get there. There is another very important player, obviously, that was mentioned here several times, which is the People's Republic of China, that is obviously present everywhere. We talk a lot about the US these days for obvious reasons, and I don't mind speaking about it as well. But actually, in my part of the world, it is still about those obvious troublemakers. So it's not, yes, we suffer from these mixed messages from Washington. Yes, we suffer from decreased democracy agenda from Washington, but when it comes to actual troublemakers or problem makers, then it will be the obvious suspects. That is Russian Federation and People's Republic of China, and lately Iran entering this space very aggressively through its very strong network of very similar to those troll farms exercised by Moscow so heavily before. And so from the, we are in a kind of battlefield communication scenario when due to the lack of resources and in most of the cases due to the lack of knowledge and access to the infrastructure, governments in authoritarian countries are using the AI and social media, especially against the societies, for bringing fake narratives and bringing fake disturbances and creating this debate space on issues that are absolutely irrelevant, but somehow dominating the public space. We have, and also there is a big fear effect that I want to say a couple of words about with AI because of lots of cases when our friends, people who we actually know, these are not just stories we've heard somewhere, but people who we actually know were targeted by AI in all kinds of derogatory campaigns and smearing campaigns, and then again, governments use it perfectly against all of us as a fear and scary effect, saying that, oh, you want to be part of it? I've been personally targeted by Chinese over the years, and because I'm one of those few people in the region, not only in my country, but probably in the whole region of South Caucasus, who is a very active and very loud voice against all the corrupt deals and elite capture and all the issues that Chinese Communist Party is involved with our governments, and every time I'm targeted by the Chinese embassy, I get these weird messages from in my boxes, being it on email or messenger or whatever, with various AI generated images and pictures of my friends who've been already targeted, like put in a porno industry or stuff like that, completely artificial, completely AI generated, and sort of saying, oh, you want to be part of it, you want to become targets like that, you want yourself to be disclosed like that. And again, this is something that you see very much favorably enjoyed and exercised by the governments on the ground in autocracies. So when we talk about the regulation, as someone who comes from the human rights world, the word regulation always rings a bell and alert for me. In this case, in this very particular situation that we are in, the way the governance is transformed, because in those AI ignorant countries, due to very extensive and massive AI influence, I would go for it 100%. Yes, please, let's regulate and let's bring as much frameworks as possible in order to make sure that we don't get another layer of suffering for the people on the ground in democratic movements now, this time not by putting them in jails or putting them under the official repression tracks, but because of AI. Thank you. And of course, happy to respond to questions.
Thank you so much, and for your bravery as well. And now I would like to say that because really all of you speakers, thank you so much, and you really did actually address all of the questions that I, in one way or another, that I put as a debate questions. But also, since I really like these kind of spontaneous debates, and I wanted to ask you, instead of these long questions that you've already answered, as 3 snap questions, and for all of you, for each of you, right? So the first one would be, what are the biggest dangers, or the biggest danger that you see right now? The second would be, what are the solutions that maybe you propose, or that haven't been addressed, or not enough, or not so obvious maybe? And then the third one would be what the scholars can do, or what institutes can do, or environments where we are now, which are somehow the merge between an institute, a university, a think tank, or something like that. So that's, and I just wanted to say. The second question. So, problem, solution, and what can we do? Egyes nincsen. So. And I just wanted to say that we mentioned legal aspects, we mentioned political aspects, we talked about security, and it is pretty fascinating when you think about it, that the dilemma between the false dilemma, as Péter Krekó said, between innovation and regulation, that one doesn't have to necessarily exclude one another. This is the same in the beginning of of social media. We had the dilemma between whether we should have privacy or we should have security, and we should have the benefits of these social media. And then at some point, this dilemma between whether we should or should not have privacy turned out to be that actually this question actually changed maybe the course of how we understand privacy at some point. So maybe we are still at some point where we can still change a course. And when you're answering these questions, maybe you can also kind of address that. Are we already beyond the point where we can change something? Are we still in the driving seat, or is it getting out of control completely right now? What do you think of that? I just thought also when you talked about democracy and totalitarianism and how AI is used in politics, I was just wondering whether actually this disinformation and this what I call the political simulation, these kind of false realities that authoritarian politics are producing, is this failing, or do you think it's thriving? Because it feels like, I know, especially after listening to what the two of you actually said, that it seems that these kind of, that we have mechanisms to fight this, and that justice is on the side of democracy, so to say, and so that there always are ways to fight this, or maybe we are also beyond the point of recognizing between lies and between true and false, and so to say, in this digital world, which is also a question of how good the AI is becoming in creating the simulation of reality. So let me stop. I just wanted to give you some minutes to prepare for these questions that I ad hoc post, and to encourage you to give short answers. It's like, it's not, you can just give a short, what is the danger, what is the solution, and what we can do. Thank you so much. Then we can have a Q&A from the audience. You can have the same order.
Okay. So now I have a chance to confess why I do not like to deal with regulation issues in this way as we make it. No problem with it. Regulate, guys, everywhere as you like it. But my problem is that regulation, alongside the first question about the dangers, it's always about reducing uncertainty, fighting against risks, identifying dangers to be able to avoid the dangers and so on. But simultaneously, it's also important to deal with the possibilities of multiplication of benefits, finding the way to use these technologies in a proper way, and so on, and so on, and so on. So the problem is the lack of this part of the discussions. Even the social media is a good example, because if you make a content analysis, the danger, uncertainty, risk, problems, and so on, this is the main narrative about the social media, while it has dozens of superb beneficiary outcome since its first inception moments. So this kind of alignment problem is my basic problem. Not the legal part, but the lack of the complex approach to the problem. And just one other comment about it. Your list about the space or satellite war or Europe, how Europe is lagging behind US and China and Russia and so on, the problems of missing forces and so on. It uses the vocabulary of competition. So these power hubs of the contemporary political, economical world are in strong competition, even in the space. Yes, but it's only a part of the truth, because they are cooperating intensively in this interesting endeavor. So it's not a simple competitive space, it's a co-competitive space. And it's very important to see the drivers behind the cooperation. The enormous need of resources to be able to support important scientific missions in the space. The benefits of knowledge exchange, instead of buying knowledge from the others, exchange the knowledge, and we have an aggregated knowledge, we all have, and SMILE, it's knowledge governance, to think about the space competition in this way. So my only message is to always trying to see, that always looking the bright side of life and regulation and social media and so on. And of course, it doesn't mean that we should neglect this, the dirty or the black or the gray part, but try to deal with as one holistic entity, and it's knowledge governance. And of course, it's a scientific, it's a real scientific challenge. Just to reflect to your third question. Fight for the mic.
Okay, I'm going backwards. So just like László, I'm also not following your instructions. So you asked what scholars can do. If you mean scholars by social scientists, yeah? Let's focus on that. Is that I think it brings a huge change in democratization of knowledge. So people will have more access to information, much faster interpretation of information. It's like writing an article or a book. Now most of the publications are written by AI. Yeah? So what is essential is that scholars don't look at this as competitor, but the question how to find its role as an enabler to focus on the value of the research and not on the volume of the research. One thing. Second, it's also a possibility that they can open up. It's also an example of what we do now. We talk about the future of universities, the future of AI, and so on, for each other, which is nice for us personally, but maybe has some limited impact. So it's also a possibility to open up to society and integrate them into these discussions to make it more democratic or public as it used to be. Maybe that's what requires a bit different approach from the scholars when they approach science. About the biggest danger and solutions, what I'm thinking about most of the time is that uneducated users and uneducated policymakers are the biggest risk when we focus on technology, because then they just adopt it without thinking how to adopt it properly, like Facebook or TikTok. So it's people has to learn how to use these technologies. Otherwise, they will look at it as a lazy, easy solution that they can do without thinking, and then they will be replaced. So I think that's a possibility, and for that, the only way to move forward is education. So that's all I was thinking of.
Okay, very short to the answers to the questions. The first one is that biggest danger. I will be very, very practical. For me, the United States of America is the biggest danger, I think, at the moment. And not because I think that probably this will change after there'll be a new administration, whatever, but the trust has been deteriorated in a certain way, that we can no longer trust in the United States of America. I think that's the biggest problem, and I don't know how can this trust can be rebuilt after the Trump administration. So that's my the solutions which are not obvious, and this is something to do also with the third question, that what can scholars can do. I think in a certain way the regulation and how we see, for example, the social media or the AI is very much depending on the narratives which are around these things. And I think that the most important thing we can do, and what the AI cannot do, actually the chatbots cannot do, is that reframe certain things. Just to give you an example, and it's also something to do with the regulation. The Article 17 in the DSA says that the platform should give statement of reasons. So every decision there should be a justification, and it is in more or less in a detailed way. It is written there that how this justification should look like, and that there'll be the facts, and the platforms just simply they cannot provide that justification, because the decisions, I mean, hundreds of millions of decisions yearly, or even billions of decisions yearly, are made by an AI, which is a statistical pattern recognition machine. And therefore, it can say that in how many, the percentage of similarity to certain categories that has been previously defined. So it cannot provide that kind of, but this is, I think, a very, very important thing, that the legislator in Europe, it has a demand that, okay, there should be, and this will, on the other side, the platform should develop something which can provide the justification, even if the decision was made by a machine. And I think that's again a kind of reframing, because the scholars, in a way, or those people who were dealing with the, like for example, Josef van Dijk, who was very influential in framing or reframing the whole platform. How we see the platforms. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I think that the platform should give reasons, statement of reasons to the decisions. That was a need or an idea which was raised by the scholars, and this in a way reframed the whole speech or discourse about the platforms. Yeah.
So the first question: what is the biggest? I will concentrate still on the outer space. So the biggest problem now is the threat is the gap. That the gap will increase in a faster pace, and we don't spend enough money to keep up with the Americans and the Chinese and the Russians, and we will lose sovereignty. And then it will just increase and increase, and then we will absolutely under the influence of the Americans, even on telecommunication market and everywhere. So the solution is, of course, money. Attract more private money, private funds, create a regulatory environment which favors these private funds, plus spend more money for space industry, especially for military investment, plus harmonize more the European and member states projects on military capabilities. What scholars can do, I can mention what we do, we try to do. My institute has won a Horizon project last year with the University of Scotland, the University of Bundeswehr, the German military university, and Thales Alenia Espace. It's a French leading European space industry. It is about European sovereignty on low Earth orbits. And we have created a network of 12 PhD students. This has just been set up, and my institute is responsible for the legal part of it. So that's what we try to do. And so just to reflect your comments, I like the bright side as well. But my motto is prepare for the worst and hope for the best. This is a general motto for lawyers, by the way. And cooperation, there is cooperation. How cool things than bringing an Italian astronaut to the Artemis program for the next mission of the NASA. But there is the competition is very fierce. And the competition is not just market competition for the profit, but it's for dominance. And that is not just an economic competition between the powers. Thank you.
Okay, so great questions. I'm not sure I will be able to give very good responses, but follow up on the previous point on remaining sovereign and Europe does not spend enough on that. I've just listened to a British podcast where I think it was very exciting to hear that the Brits have more or less the same perception than the Europeans, that the United States have become a problematic ally. I would still argue that the United States is an ally, and I think when it comes to Russia, for example, it's definitely a bigger danger to Europe, but it's a problematic ally. But they repeated arguments of the French on strategic autonomy, as the subtitle of the program says as well, which is a French term that really came into fashion in Europe, but the Brits have always been very skeptical about that. Right now they feel something similar, that they have to be a bit more independent and sovereign. And for example, the United Kingdom have established a fund, an AI sovereignty fund, aiming to finance research and development in certain sectors, not claiming very dogmatically that we have to not rely on the Americans everywhere, and we have to cut everyone off, let's say, Facebook and so on and so on. So we have to be, I think, wise also thinking about sovereignty while keeping the perspective of efficiency on the table as well. But I think this kind of innovation is important, and I think the UK is probably one step ahead of Europe in that sense. When it when it comes to what can social scientists do, and it will not be directly related to the panel in the sense that it's not necessarily about digital sovereignty, but it's more about digital democracy. And I think, and I'm saying it as a social psychologist, and there has been many research already on human and technology interaction still absolutely insufficient. And I think the pace on which the technology just floods us over, and the pace on which we can grasp its relevance, there is a huge gap between the two. And I would just say generally that it is very sad that social sciences and humanities are increasingly underfunded in an era where it's more important to define what is human than ever before, because technology puts everything in question, and human and artificial intelligence and so on and so on. So I do think that we need more social sciences, and we need more humanities, because this is not just a challenge of understanding, but I think there is a huge anxiety all over the society. What is the value of humans in an era where ChatGPT beats you in almost every topic, even in the topics that you regard an expert, you regard yourself an expert. So I will stop here.
Well, thank you. Peter answered my part of the third question, so I won't go into details of it, but I want to still touch some of the issues. Well, first of all, to your first question, biggest danger. Let me be a little bit provocative into what is trendy in Europe now. I don't think United States is the major problem. I don't think United States is even a problem at this moment when you look on a bigger scheme of the things. Because we can look at everything what happened with the Trump's administration, because we cannot change it, right? It's there, it's going to be there for another 2 years. Let's look at it as an opportunity that, well, it served a wake-up call. Okay, as much Europe can be disappointed, it cannot deny the fact that you depended too much on the United States. You took it for granted. You took it too easy. You took it like somebody owed you something for your own security. And it's not only about the hard security. So what we are discovering more and more today, unfortunately for Europe, is that it's not only arms and heavy machinery and military units and, you know, the conventional warfare tools and instruments that Europe so much depended on the US, but technologically speaking also, Europe kind of is absent, right? Every company we talk about, we touch, is either American or Chinese or something else, but not the European. Every data center we touch on is either in the United States or somewhere else, but not in the European Union. So where were you guys? What were you doing? Just enjoying nice beaches in Italy and Spain and enjoying life on the sake of the other? So I don't want to be very cynical, but unfortunately, that you took it too easy, and I think that you should be grateful to Donald Trump for this wake up. And if there will be change, and we all hope there will be change for good in the US in 2 years, the world will be much stronger. We will have US back, and then we will have stronger Europe on the other side. But my skepticism is, and my fear is, that most of the political elite, okay, let's put it on the shoulder of them, not on the societies, but most of the political elites in Europe are just waiting for these 2 years to be over, making all the promises, talking, writing all the papers, but not really acting on not actually moving on with creating all the necessary defense shields for Europe, if and in case US is not there to help. And I have a feeling sometimes when I listen to the European leaders that they cannot just wait when these 2 years will be over and the White House will be back, as they call it, back, to let them have a nice, enjoyable life without really taking care of anything important in life. So that's my biggest fear is that we enjoy and we spend so much time on criticizing Americans or building some stuff about Americans, that many countries just forgot that there are real threats and there are real threat actors and there are real dangers out there in the world still exactly in the same shape and form and with the same ambitions and with the same ideas as before 2024 US elections. And that China is gaining strength and Russia, with all the troubles and problems, is still there and is not going anywhere. But we spend time talking about Americans. That's my biggest fear. As I said, I live in Japan, and more I am present on the discussions there when people basically talk exclusively US. Exclusively US, and not that much anything else. And that's my biggest fear. That we get sometimes disillusioned that we have some other friends than the Americans, in terms of the big powers, I mean. And as for what we can do, again, I agree with everything Peter said. I just want to stress once more that I think that there is a huge room in all the intellectual spaces, in political science labs or social science labs or law schools, and specifically in European universities, where we can actually build a democracy, I didn't want to use this word, but nothing else comes to my mind, democracy shield out of AI. And there is a huge intellectual wealth in Europe, in European science labs and in European schools. And we just need to use it for creating, for turning AI as one of those most critical, most important shields to defend the democratic state order that is so much under the siege right now.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I also wanted just one question for you before you take back the word. I just wanted to ask you, with this rapid response system and with this flagging, with this fascinating percentage of deleted or flagged content, just to go back to that question, which is a little bit philosophical, and that is whether actually the platforms themselves have their own rule baked into their own rules. Are these rules, you know, to actually eliminate the, so to say, disinformation, in the sense fake contents, false information, fake news, AI videos that are showing some kind of false information? So is it already there, and then we just need these mechanisms, for such as the one that you used, to then reinforce the rule that is already there and that is also in DSA or somewhere? So is this what we're talking about when we're talking about election frauds in this digital sphere? That was the question.
Thank you for the question. I mean, when it comes to, so every platforms have their policies, but they, surprise, have much stricter policies on how to say digital deception and disinformation in the pre-Trump era or the pre-Trump 2 era than now. So it's in the United States. This issue has become so over-politicized that there is a judicial process in the United States, and also the Justice Committee in the United States is having a hearing if any social media company leader can be found as serious censors in the United States, then they can have trouble in the US. Why? They have to comply to the Digital Services Act. So I think it is not easy. I can understand that part, because it's the current US administration have a very strong line, and also have a, how to say, a bit of punitive attitude when it comes to even social media platform policies that want to eliminate disinformation or limit free speech, as they say. Yes, so there are platform policies, still some in place, and there is the Digital Services Act and some regulations that are connected to the Digital Services Act. I don't want go into deep details, but this transparency and targeting of political advertisements regulation that has been passed, it makes, for example, targeted political advertisements much more difficult, and as a consequence, as a response to that law, that Google and Meta said they just won't be able to comply because it's so tricky. They decided to totally abandon political advertisements, and you cannot advertise right now, officially at least, on Meta and Google in election. You cannot address voters with political advertisements, and in Hungary it was a huge game changer. For example, in political elections, Hungary was the champion of political advertisements. Hungary at the 2024 elections spent more, Hungarian political parties, mostly the governmental party and its proxies, on political advertisements than German political players. So a country with 8 times as much population and 20 times as much economy. So Hungary was really a champion, and yeah, everyone who lived in Hungary could just remember this very Orwellian moments when you just wanted to watch a YouTube video or watch a children video with your child, and immediately a propaganda video jumped into your face. Ursula von der Leyen is evil, Zelensky wants to attack us, and so on and so on. And sorry, I just wanted to see Peppa Pig, and how does it come into picture? And
it's on Netflix without advertising.
Subscribe for YouTube Premium.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe you're right. So I think it's a surprising case in the sense that I would not like to say that it was the game changer at the Hungarian election. I think it was one of the many factors that led to a situation where the state-sponsored disinformation in Hungary was much less efficient in these elections than before, and the interesting thing is that because of the fact that the platforms themselves are afraid of even responding to emails to dedicated institutions, because it can be sent to the United States and can be made as a legal evidence against them. But this rapid response system is let's imagine it as a black box, a machine. You send in the information and they make a decision, but it is invisible to the US eyes, so they can be much more cooperative with the EU regulations and comply with the EU regulations in this when they are in this box. I think I could easily imagine a mechanism that let's extend the rapid response system to, I mean, let's make it eternal. So it's not just 1 month before the election, but even beyond that. It could be made, I think, absolutely universal in time. Yes, and just one quick point on what Tinatin have raised, and I think it's a very good debate. Let me slightly disagree, and I'm always.
I disagree with myself. I just wanted.
Okay, when it comes to Europe's role, because yes, I think empty U.S. bashing does not lead us anywhere. But Germany, for example. Next year will spend more on its defense than France and UK combined, which is, I think, and it is politically quite painful. Let's take a look at AfD's rising popularity in Germany. So I think Europe is taking sacrifices in order to rearm itself. Maybe it won't be as efficient as we expect, but still is important. And at the same time, European Union is currently the main supporter of Ukraine when it comes to humanitarian aid, and of course, when it comes to weapons as well. Of course, we buy the weapons from the Americans, but we buy the weapons from Americans, and in that sense, I think Europe starts to step up to its, historical opportunity and also obligations.